Welcome to the Spirit Soul Series podcast, and we are back on another episode where we've got Supriya Chechi, the wise master, and we are going to continue with the fifth chapter of the Gita, the 15th verse. So let's
Okay,
start, Supriya Chechi. Go.
okay. Thank you, Kanan, Siddharth. Thank you very much, and Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Now,
Yeah,
what this chapter just one will do a very brief review or recap of what we did last time, which is the first half of chapter 5. But before we do that, just understand the chapter 5 is basically getting us ready to come to chapter 6, which is just Dhyana Yoga, what we know as Ashtanga Yoga, and this technical process of achieving the same results that are possible by Karma Yoga, but taking it to a higher level. So in chapter 5, what they've been describing until now in the first 15 verses, that you acquire a certain equipoise or equanimity of mind where nothing disturbs the person because they are getting so much satisfaction internally. And they have conquered all the usual anarthas. And we'll hear more about that later in this chapter, kama, krodha, etc. And there were three analogies in the last class, which in the portion we covered. But the most striking one there, if you remember, is the one about the city with the 9 gates, city of 9 gates. Yeah, you remember it was about the body that
yeah,
the jiva
yeah,
living in.
correct. Yeah.
I think I'm not
I
sure
think I
where you are.
remember it.
Okay, basically it is just the 9 holes of the
Ah,
body, starting with nostril, ears, etc. And
hmm,
that the body is treated as a city with 9 gates or openings. And just as in a city, the gates are guarded carefully. There are guards there to screen and check what goes in and what comes out. Similarly, a jiva or soul that is well situated in this city will do the same with the influences working on him or what goes into him and comes out, both material and at a subtle level. So the city of 9 gates is like a very striking tool that we've been given so that we can treat our own body, we can screen and discriminate in terms of what we watch, what we hear, what we speak, what we eat, how we exercise, etc.
hmm.
Yeah, because self-control and self-restraint is a key factor in all spiritual progress.
This is the verse, right? Sorry, no, this is the verse. No? When the embodied living beings controls his nature and mentally renounces all actions,
Yeah,
he
13
resides
and
happily in the city of 9 gates, neither
yeah,
working nor causing work to be done.
yeah, 13 and 14. So this, and because the self-restraint or self-control is the key, is a key factor in spiritual progress and in spiritual life. So, and the what goes completely against that and pulls us in the opposite direction is the pulling and pushing of the senses.
Hmm.
So the senses have got to be dealt with. Okay, they're like mad dogs running in any direction, and in order to control them, we learn. If we keep this analogy in mind of ourselves and the body, that you don't pander to anything and everything that the mind throws up, or the tongue demands, or the etc., or the ears or eyes want. You don't. You discriminate and you check and balance. So that therefore there is this one powerful analogy. There was another analogy that was also quite good, which is about you remember something about smelling a flower, that the super soul
Hmm.
that comes towards in the last in the purport. I think the purport is it's given in the purport and not in the main text, main verse, of how the Lord as Paramatma is situated inside, and he knows our desires exactly like you would hold a flower near your nose and smell it.
Hmm.
So that's also quite a kind of a remarkable analogy. It means that there's nothing we can hide from the Supreme Lord. We may be surrendered, we may not be surrendered, we may be atheist, we may be a devotee. But fact is, he's sitting there fully cognizant of
Hmm.
everything that's happening. And he is omniscient, omnipresent, etc. So he knows exactly what we're thinking, desiring, planning, executing, regretting, lamenting. So, there is a saying about how you can fool some of the people some of the time or all the time, but or you can't fool all the people all the time. Actually, you can't fool God anytime. because he's there and he's witnessing. He's there as Sakshi and he is witnessing everything. So that was another analogy about how the Lord knows our desires, just like we would know the smell of a flower by holding it near our nose. There's another analogy that's a good one, which is about a cloud. When it is a portion of a cloud, when it is separated from the parent cloud, it just gets blown away. So it is that analogy was given to suggest how utterly dependent we are on the mercy of the Lord, and how depending on our desires, we get blown west or we get blown east. That is, we go towards heaven or we go towards hell. The Lord merely sanctions like an impartial witness. And the last prominent analogy in this section is about water rolling off the leaf of a lotus plant. How the water doesn't get stuck to the leaf because the leaf is so waxy that the water just rolls off. And similarly, we have to learn to act in such a way that the reactions don't stick to us. They should just roll off. And there's another analogy given not here, but in lectures that by Srila Prabhupada, how you must learn to catch fish without getting wet. Means basically that you situate yourself, like if now you are going to a new job, you have a new situation, you do whatever is required to keep body and soul together. You have to maintain modicum good relations with the people who employ you, the people who work with you, or below you, hierarchy. But don't get entangled. Don't get entangled in any mess that they are creating, or anything that they say about you, which may hurt. But so this chapter 5, although it is abstract, it is giving useful tips how to situate ourselves in this material world. At least try and remember these verses and these explanations to check and guard ourselves when we are operating in this world around us.
One actually thing that I found useful in the Bhagavatam actually, where I don't
Yes.
know which part of the Bhagavatam is written, but somewhere in the Bhagavatam is written that avoid unnecessary talks.
Mm,
So like
definitely.
I do that like in my life now. I don't I used to engage in like unnecessary talks all the time, and now I don't do that. I just like, if somebody's talking about something now, I'll be like, I don't need to talk about this. I don't need to do anything. Like, just let it be. And
Mm,
I'll realize that just by not engaging in, if somebody's not talking about anything that's like uplifting or something spiritual in some sense, or at least
mhm.
somewhere close to that, if somebody's just talking about some gossip, this person said this to that person said this about this person, and this kind of thing, if you talk a lot about it, you get entangled in all that, and then
Very much.
you get the results of of that whole action basically. So I
True,
don't
true,
do
yeah.
that, like unnecessary talk. Like, you can come across as like, oh, you're not saying anything, but like, it's like it makes sense. Just don't get involved in unnecessary talk. It'll help you in many ways, I feel.
So true. But does that mean that you get labeled as an antisocial?
No, no, no,
Not
no,
not antisocial. Sorry, not in the sense of antisocial elements, but not sociable or not friendly. Does it mean
no, no,
that
no,
you?
no, no, not like that. Like, I feel like you need to understand also when you have to do it. You can't like do it all the time. But like,
Oh, oh,
if somebody's like if somebody's talking about some gossip, I'll be like, I'll say something, but then I'll be like, I don't have much to contribute to this whole thing, and I'll
oh,
just let
nice,
it be.
nice.
And
Yeah,
so then, yeah, that's it. I'll be like that.
nice. Good policy. And also because when people start talking, they talk, especially with women. It happens in the case of women. They talk, and then they just say this, and then they say something else and something else, and there is no control. The control is completely lost over the tongue. And in the process, not only that they create so much aparad and offense, they themselves get completely confused and start believing what they've said. I've seen this
the
happen.
the
Yeah.
Bhagavatam says this. It says this about women. It's like you can't trust a woman because she'll go and she'll go and like talk to this person and that person. Like, like, I don't know. There's a lot of things, like, they'll say like, don't. There's a lot of stuff there. But
I
like,
understand. Yeah, which may be considered controversial in today's, not
yeah,
politically correct in today's
yeah,
situation,
yeah.
right? Yeah, I understand. So one has to see in what context and then try and understand it, even if we can't accept it fully. Where are you at the Bhagavatam, by the way?
I
What
reached
how?
the 10th. 10th canto.
Okay, so
So
now the
like
10th
I'm
canto.
on the 13th chapter, I think. That
So these are all basically the leelas, no? All the
Leelas.
pastimes of baby Krishna and
Putana, like we finished the Putana, then Bakasura, and then Agasura. Like yesterday,
okay,
I was reading the Agasura pastime, and like what do you say, like how all these demons just basically like, they're just like employed by Kamsa to just kill Krishna the whole time, and this, and he's like just busy playing the whole time. He's like,
right,
just
right.
going around playing, just being a normal boy, ordinary boy, like making jokes and just having fun. And like I was just thinking like this is the god, like like god as in
Uh-huh.
like who's so playful. It's like I
And
don't think there's
so
any other
relaxed.
god. Yeah, so like
Uh-huh.
there's no other god that exists where you can say that he's like putting dirt on his face and he's like laughing. All gods generally are supposed to be serious and all that, but like when
Right.
you listen to the leelas, like you start feeling a lot of like you start loving Krishna in a different way actually. And there's like this stuff like in one sense like you can like I can relate to this. When I was a small boy, I used to do stuff like this, and like even
Mhm.
he's also doing stuff like this. So I mean so it's very relatable, and so in that sense, so it's pretty
Actually,
cool.
what you're saying is exactly what convinced one of those Western leaders in Prabhupada's time. One of his disciples is still around. I don't remember it was Satsrup Maharaj or it was the other famous for writing and earlier editor of the British. He said the same thing because the Christian concept of God is something along like Atlas and the huge burden on his holding the globe and climbing down, and one of great struggle and taking so much weight. And but when he came to this the Krishna pastimes, or if of course he would might not have read it in his early days from the Bhagavatam, but because the 10th canto is summarized and made freely available to people who have not got that far in the Bhagavatam in the form of the Krishna book. Prabhupada insisted that the Krishna book should be produced even before any of the other serious books, so
I'll
that
be
we can
reading
read.
that book after this. I'll be reading that book after that.
Yeah, and I think Krishna book was made possible because of a nice, generous donation by, was it John Lennon? There's a forward to it. Anyway, so through the Krishna book, either Satyarup Maharaj, who finally wrote the Prabhupada Lilamrita, or who's still around now, or else it was Ravindra Swarup Prabhu, also very scholarly, and Philadelphia Temple, etc. One of those who joined later said, when they came to this description of God, they felt this is it, this must be God, because he is, like you said, he is doing epic heroic fights and struggles, conquering evil demons, but it's all a part of the it's just all part of the day's work. It's not a big issue, so this must be really God. That's why he's so superior to us ordinary human beings.
And
So this is
one thing I really like about the story is the relationship between him and his mother. Like his mother like it doesn't even know that he's God, but she just treats him like a son. And like he
uh-huh.
loves that even more. He doesn't like to be he doesn't want to be treated as a god in that sense. Like as if there is
Right,
like pure love and affection, then he loves that even more. He doesn't want like this like him being put on this pedestal. If you can love him, that'll be even better. And his mother
mm.
sees him that way, like beats him up, like he has any issues, like hits him,
Beats him
like,
up, ties.
and ties him up and all that stuff, like what a normal mother would. And can you I was like, imagine he's God, like if he wanted, like he could just like kill her if he wanted to, like end her. And she's doing all these things, like it's amazing. And like the fact is that like she's like he's opens his mouth, and then when he opens his mouth, the whole universe is there inside his mouth and all that stuff, right? And
Eating mud. He's been eating
yeah,
mud, so
he's
she
meaning mud.
knows that.
And so then she asks him to open his mouth, like, so she tells him like, Till now I'm not said anything to you because we were having fun, and all the gopis, everybody is like jumping up and down, having a lot of fun, and but your friends are coming and telling me that you're eating mud, and they are telling me that you have eaten this and consumed this. So, and they are worried. So if they are worried, then what do you think? I also won't be worried. And so then she asks him to open his mouth. So he opens his
Okay.
mouth, and and the whole universe is inside his mouth, like all the various living, non-living entities, everything, Shiva, all these people are there. And she can't understand what this whole thing is. Like she's not able to understand like what this is.
I
So when
think
she
faints. Huh? She faints, so she
she
briefly loses consciousness or something,
no,
and then
she's
comes
like,
back.
yeah, she's in that, she's seeing all that, but then the minute he closes his mouth, everything goes away. So then
Goes
like,
off. Okay.
and so she can't understand what happened, so then she just forgets it immediately, and she's like, she again
Right,
goes
right,
back to treating him like a son, which I
right.
found like amazing. Like you see the everything, and then suddenly you're like,
Okay.
okay, everything is normal, like, as if nothing happened, like, that was pretty nice. I felt that was pretty
Do
good.
you have you seen that painting of her chasing him with a stick?
No,
She's
no, no.
running. It's like a profile. It's a ISKCON painting, and he's running for his life. Like some of these small children run. This little blue naked form with just a loincloth and some jewels. She's got a real stick in her hand, and she's chasing him. It's a lovely painting. She's a kind of heavy-bodied, traditional Govardhan kind of lady in her appearance. Hefty, little hefty, and she's got her hair flying and everything, and she's running. It's really cute. And in the Leelas, have you come across this Dhenukasura, the donkey demon? How
Not yet.
it
I
is
think I think that should come soon. I think. Oh yeah, I
okay
think that'll come soon. Yeah, I'm the 13th
because
chapter, so I don't know when that happens. I'm not sure.
okay because I'm also not sure
Yeah.
exactly when that comes in the
Yeah.
Bhagavatam. But the Dhenukasura Leela, it's interesting because Balaram is actually the hero. It's not Krishna. It's
Uh,
Balaram, the brother. And the donkey demons, they want to again, like you said, go and just frolic in a date palm.
I know the story, like, because I when I was like a small kid, I had seen the cartoon version of that. So
I
like
see.
the cartoon
Uh,
version I'd seen, like, there's actually a cartoon version of Little Krishna that's there.
uh,
And so
I
I had
see.
seen the story of the Anakasura is there in that. So I know the story, but like, I've not in the Bhagavatam, I've not reached that part basically.
Okay.
I've not reached
I
that.
would say I started my spiritual life. At least one of the turning points is seeing a painting of the
Oh,
Dhenukasura demon with a painting, and it's a lovely painting because they are just taking these donkeys and by the hoof and
by the
swirling
hoof
them,
and swirling
going
up,
with
and yeah.
very dramatic. Yeah, and the date palm, the little mangrove-like date palm garden in which they have, because they couldn't get at their date palm. The
You
demons
should
were so,
you should watch the cartoon series, Supriya Chechi. That's actually very nice. That cartoon series, no, they have
yeah,
all the leelas of Krishna and that little Krishna. It's all the
uh-huh,
leelas are there. All the demons like that Krishna's fighting, no, is there in
yes,
that.
yes.
It's there in that cartoon series. I think it's there on Sony Live or
Where do
something.
I,
It's there
where
on
do I
Sony.
get? Is there a
So it's
link?
there. Yeah, I can send it to you, because in that, like, there are all these episodes of Krishna's pastimes in that. Like, it's in a cartoon version, and so when you see that, you can, like, it's you like it even more actually, because you can actually see that
Okay,
cartoon.
see, visually, I
Yeah,
understand.
it's
Very
pretty
nice.
nice. So like,
Okay, so,
yeah.
yeah. I know you're on
And
the 20th,
sidetracked
and
us.
no,
Yeah.
you have a real taste for the stories. I think that's how you're able
Story,
to weave.
it's like when Bhagavatam, you go from Dhruva's story, then you go to Jadabharata's story, then then there's a long description about a lot of things, and then you get to Pralad, then you get to then I think after Pralad you get to like Indra and Vritasura. I think that's the demon's name, where he fights Vritasura,
Correct,
and
correct.
uh, and he gets like this, like, Vishnu kind of blesses him with this, like, he tells him to go to a sage. I don't know the sage name, and they, like, with the bones of the sage you'll get the thunderbolt and all stuff, and he fights with
Uh-huh.
that Vitasura demon, and he kills him using the thunderbolt, and so Indra defeats the demon or stuff, and
Okay.
that thing is there. And even though the demon is actually acting in like a lot of in a lot of goodness, like, he's trying to fight, but all the other demons are like like getting scared and running away and all that stuff. So he's like stands
Uh-huh.
there and fights. So that story is good. A lot of other stories like that. Then there's like then if you keep going here to Bali Maharaj's story, where I
Hmm.
didn't know that Maharaj Bali was like the grandson of Prahlad. I had
Yeah,
no
we
idea.
did.
I didn't know
Yeah.
that. I didn't know what like, because then that would mean that Vishnu came as an avatar like twice in a row. Like after that, like, in a sense, like that Prahlad and Bali Maharaj are somewhat connected in that. that whole story of Hiranyakashyap and
Yeah.
Bali Maharaj is like somewhat connected, because as Bali Maharaj is like, he gets the power, he does he, I think he impresses the sage Shukracharya thing, and so
Mhm.
Shukracharya is very impressed by his devotion and all that. So he awards him all these benedictions, and then he gets these powers. He defeats
And more,
Indra.
no, more than that, what actually happens is Shukracharya becomes his guru. And
Guru, huh?
Shukracharya gives him advice not to surrender, to be very cautious in granting anything that Vishnu asks. Shukracharya. So this is one of those rare instances where the devotee or the disciple ignores the guru, bypasses the guru, and just follows his heart and goes straight to God. It's a very rare instance. Okay, carry on. Yeah. Shukracharya
So
particularly tells him, be careful what you are going
yeah,
to offer because you will be
correct,
in trouble.
correct, correct. And so in that time when Vishnu like descends as a Vaman avatar,
Yeah.
he's the son. She's the son of who's Vaman's mother and father?
I'm not getting the names right
Is it
now.
Aditi or
Aditi and Kashyap. Aditi and Kashyap, I'm not very sure. Anyway, yeah,
ah,
go on with.
it's Aditi only, I think, because she
Oh,
does like, and she she's like kind, because of her son being driven away by Bali Maharaj from the heavenly planets. Like she approaches Kashyap and asks him like, what should I do? How do I get my son? Like I think one of her sons is also as a demigod basically. So
okay.
how do I get my son back into the heavenly planets and all that? So she's like kind of upset that Bali Maharaj is also like he's controlling the upper planets and all the heavenly realms. So she
Hmm.
asks Sage Kashyap to, what should I do? And so he tells her that you must perform this kind of yoga, like some kind of practice you must do. I don't know the name of the practice, but you have to practice this, chant this particular kind of mantra, and you will get the benediction and stuff. And so Vishnu comes and he's pleased by it, and then he gives her, like he says, I'm so blessed by, I'm so pleased with it, so I'll come as your son. So he
Hmm.
comes as Vaman, like Vamana, the dwarf, as a son.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
he goes to that place where Bali Maharaj is there, and so then he asks him like, it comes as a Brahmin basically, the
Hmm.
Brahmin dwarf. And so he asks him, then that's when you said Shukracharya like tells him like, be careful what you're going to give him and all stuff.
Right, right,
He's asking for 3 steps of land, but whoa, this
right,
person is actually Vishnu in disguise, and you
right,
need to. It basically doesn't need to be careful, like what you're going to give him and all stuff. So this guy's,
right.
Bali Maharaj in one sense is like very honorable. He says like, you know, I can't not give anything to, like I can't not reject a Brahmin, like if somebody's coming, whoever's coming and offering me, asking me for something, I have to give it to them. I can't say
Hmm.
no. No. So he says, okay. So in that way, like, Vishnu, like, I mean, Vaman covers with his first step, he covers like the, the heavenly realm. And then the second step, he covers the hellish realm. And so now the thing is like, at the
The
third
third.
step, Sukracharya tells him like, now you've lost it, because in the third step, he's already covered everything. If you don't give him what he's offered, then you will be cursed for eternity and other stuff. In that
And
time, Bali.
not
Hmm.
1 minute. Not only that, I'm just interjecting. I think the size of his foot keeps increasing.
Yeah, yeah,
Vamana or Vishnu avatar
yeah,
Vamana, the size of foot keeps increasing. That is how he completely kind of covers the entire. There's no space, and then Bali Maharaj has to bow down and
yeah.
surrender and show his own head to put
Yeah.
for him to
And
put.
then
Yeah.
after that, like I guess with that, I think Bali Maharaj just like goes down, I guess, and then he's but then he's also like I don't know if
Elevated.
he's dead. Elevate,
Elevated.
he's elevated,
Ah,
right? Yeah. Okay.
because he's given a whole planet to himself.
Ah, yeah, yeah,
He's
yeah.
given a whole planet to
Correct,
himself,
correct.
where the yeah, and the relationship between them as a gatekeeper, the Lord is willing
Uh,
in
that's
granting this.
when that is the time when Prahlad comes into that story, where he comes in, he appears in
Yeah,
that part, and then he's like he tells he tells Vamana that on behalf of like I think he tells him like behalf like please forgive him for all the things that he's done, something like he tells him. And,
Yeah.
like that he says things. I think he, Bali Maharaj, and I think a couple of other people, they all go to this planet. They all
Right.
leave together and they go to this planet. So I think that's when you can say that the Prahlad story somewhat gets over. But like if
Okay.
you, because if you read that Hiranyakashipu story, you will think, okay, it got over then. But then he's still
Right.
there
Right. Right.
even when Bali Maharaj is there and all that stuff. And they talk about that Krishna, I'm not Krishna, Vaman, like in that form of Vishnu, talks about his ancestors, talks about the lineage that he comes from. He comes from this family
Mhm.
of great demons. I think he says
Mhm.
great demons, like they were all demons basically, but they were
Yeah.
very highly elevated demons in one sense. Like they had like Hiranyakashipu, Prahlad is also a demon, Bali Maharaj is
Mhm.
also a demon. So a lot of
Mhm.
them, but they're all highly elevated because they're always they got past that demoniac mentality and they were constantly situated in that uh,
That's a
in
very
the
interesting concept, no? Or if you just see it as black and white, even to me it came as a surprise or a shock that Prahlad is in the Daitya line, not the Devas. That basically he's in the lineage of the demons. That's right. It's little startling to know this, but like you said, the whole arrangement is so interesting that they've got past their demonic mentality and
Hmm.
they're constantly getting elevated. And in Bali Maharaj's case, the actual crux of the point, the problem or the issue was that there was pride left in him. He was
Hmm.
doing, as a ruler, he was doing everything so nicely that there was still pride left in him. And it is to rid him or cleanse him of that pride that Vishnu in the form of Vaman or Krishna in the form of Vaman made such an impossible demand and took away everything from him. Because taking away everything from a person, unless he won't let go. Normally, what happens is that at the time of death, we suddenly realize we can't take anything. But the desires are still there in the mind. So in the next body, we start again, hankering and desiring. Bali Maharaj is already past all that. The only problem was that he done his duty so meticulously as a Raja. That's why, there is a Onam festival in Kerala. Because it was a time of such, his reign was one of such prosperity and good harvest, etc. So the pride which was there is what Vishnu was trying to pull out from the root.
I
So
have
that is
I have one doubt. Wanted to ask you, Supriya. Like when it comes to the demigods, they
yeah.
are like if they are in the heavenly planets, why aren't they ever able to like get to like Vaikuntha or why are they never able to get to that
No,
place?
one is that they act actually, they are there by the Lord's instruction or wish to be there for those of us who are on a lower level of these planets to pray to them. And they are like departmental heads. One gives rainwater, another gives sunlight, the Surya Dev, another gives like this moonlight. And they are there part of the larger picture or the design of the Lord. They are there you are asking why are not they aspiring to give up this and to go back to Godhead? It's really because they are not one at the level of the like a pure devotee. Therefore, you have conflict. How great and elevated and powerful, like so much Aishwarya they have, but there's often so much conflict in with Indradev and Indradev getting jealous and insecure and nervous if someone else is given a boon, that makes them more powerful than him, etc. That's one reason. The other reason is that they are there for a purpose, so that the material mentality person on this world in this world aspires first to the heavenly planets. Then if he is pursuing the correct track, then he sees beyond it. In many cases the jivas go back to the heavenly planets and then come down again when the pious credit is over. So it is like you can ask, why can't we just have ground floor and the 13th floor or the 12th floor? Why must we have the second and the third and the fourth and the fifth? Because there is need there for people to cross these stages before going up.
But
They serve a purpose.
even people like let's say for example Brahma, who's considered to be
Yeah,
like the highest demigod in
yeah.
in all the demigods, he's got his own planet which is Brahmaloka.
Loka,
And
yeah.
but like even he's also not able to like on his own capacity, he's not able to get to Vaikuntha. But is he already there or is he like is he not like is
So,
he there or is not there like in that
no, just remember one thing. One is that Brahma is a post. And
Oh,
apparently, that is the highest position that a jiva can get to after so many lifetimes of doing everything properly. He can go to Brahma Loka and rule there as Brahma. So it is a post or a position. Now, why does he not want to go? Does he even want to go to Vaikuntha Loka? I don't think so. These are arrangements on posts made for entities who want to be very powerful and have got so qualified themselves so much that they don't necessarily want to give all that up and become submissive to the Lord and go there and serve. Therefore, when they're in trouble, they go to the Milky Ocean and stand at the edge, and Brahma is like a whole deputation goes to Brahma, and Brahma puts across a request. That's different. Another interesting angle to all this is the question is, do the demigods actually come down? Now think very carefully about this, because Laguna Beach in America, when Prabhupada's disciples went there, and I think Prabhupada also went there, the extent of the wealth and the lovely climate and the living conditions and the beauty of the people of America that time in Laguna Beach, it was just so astonishing. How, I mean, one ends up thinking, how can somebody have done, not that we should aspire for it, but if you start thinking about this business of karma, what did they do in previous lives to get so much and all together? So they didn't have spiritual understanding, obviously. That is why ISKCON was going there and starting, and they had, it was all for fun, meaning their gambling and their casinos, and but they were so well endowed. And Prabhupada is supposed to have made a statement which is taken very seriously, that some of those characters living at that time in Laguna Beach were demigods that have come down. So it may seem like a fantastic, ridiculous statement, if you, but it has said, I have often wondered, if you read the biographies of some of these people who, like, I'm thinking specifically of the Maharani Gayatri Devi, who's no more, of Jaipur. There was a school formed by her, started by her called MGD, etc. If you see her biography, it's called A Princess Remembers, and I think she had someone else write it for her. I looked into this biography and read it 2 3 times, because in a very honest way she talks of her childhood, and she is born, her mother is from the Baroda royal family line, her father is from that place near Assam, not Assam, one of the northeastern, not Bardhaman. I'm not getting it.
Nagaland.
Eh?
Uh,
What is it?
Nagaland or
No, no, no,
Tripura,
no, not, no, no, no.
Meghalaya,
Not Tripura and none of those.
some
I just
Manipur.
checked.
No,
Not
no.
Mizo, Naga, nothing.
Yeah.
Not even Tripura. It's not coming back now, but like it is from the royal family.
Sikkim.
Her father. No, no, no. A minor state. Anyway, maybe I'm not giving you the right description. But the fact is that her father died when she was barely 6. But despite that, the mother and the extent of the wealth, and then the way her life unfolds, she had beauty. She then had this fairy tale marriage to Raja Jai Singh as his third wife, who was a great polo player. So he was popular with the British. And you can say it was a waste of her life at one level, because she never really seriously went into spirituality in any way. Okay, they had that temple, the Govind, what is it called, the Radha Govind temple in Jaipur, which is inside one of their palaces, but it never really touched her if you read a biography. But the extent of the opulence, it's just so astonishing. If you stop and think, what did these people do in previous lives to get these results? There, this Laguna Beach comment by Srila Prabhupada actually makes a lot of sense. There is no other explanation. And I'll try and track down, there's a particular shloka in one of the Upanishads or the Bhagavatam that will tell you the reverse direction traffic also. That all by, it goes something like this, all meaning the jivas by their own effort go up to the Devata rank and to the demigod, to the heavenly planets, and then they come down again when their pious credit is over. So the traffic happens in both ways. And when they come down, because the pious credit is over, there's still so much leftover baggage to enjoy. Like you say, you had a very heavy harvest, beautiful harvest, you hold feast, you give away, there's still so much left. So these are the kind of characters who get born into royal families. They may be lost spiritually, But still, the kind of descriptions, the wealth, you can say sociologically, if you analyze, they were looting the public, or then the British came and looted them and took away the heirlooms, all their jewels. There is a Nizam of Hyderabad. When they finally broke into his palace, they found a huge, costly emerald being used inside his shoe to adjust the big size. Like we put a ball of paper at the tip of the shoe, which is too big. If someone has by mistake a school shoe, school uniform shoe, this man was using it. Earlier, it was a paperweight on his table. Then, in some situation, he couldn't find anything else and he used it to fill the space. I think he was a small man, small built man. So, the extent of the wealth, you think of the extent of the wealth of the Russian royal family, the Romanovs, it's what were they in a previous life. That is not to suggest that they actually had very happy lives in this life. May not be. Even Maharani Gayatri Devi, at the age of 50, she's widowed. She goes to jail under Indira Gandhi. Her son turns out a drug addict and commits suicide or dies by drug addiction. There's so much legal battle for her property. But this question of karma and the devatas and that whole, it's all real that the traffic goes this way and then comes back also. Again, not that we should waste our time aspiring for it, but sometimes one is really astounded by the wealth and the opulence of certain situations or certain people, and you wonder, like what they were earlier. So the
So
Laguna Beach is famous.
in one so in one sense, like people like, let's say, Indra, or like Brahma is a maybe maybe
Exception.
Brahma's
Then
closer, but then but Indra, in the sense, like, let's take Indra for as an example. He's like the king of heaven. He's like the king of the demigods. He's probably the greatest materialist. So even he's not reached a stage yet, like when he's got
absolutely.
to
That's the
Vaikunta,
point.
like in that sense.
That's the point. I think the desire is probably not there. There is still some desire to enjoy separately or to occupy their own, and so the Lord engages them beautifully to enhance his pastimes. Somebody has to feel bad and then go to Brahma, and then Brahma goes to them, and like this. Someone has to make Indra insecure and jealous to start a fight, and then again the devatas rush to him and Krishna intervenes. So he also requires people to fight with him. He loves a good fight. This is another aspect of him, of Vishnu or Krishna. So to enhance his pastimes, so many types and varieties of characters are there. That's the reason, the answer to your question. And apart from that, on a positive note, the devatas or the demigods very much play a role like departmental heads, supplying whatever are the material needs of the jiva stuck in the material world. That's why we have all these yagyas, even the Vedas recommend, and the homas. This god will give you this, that god will give you marriage, this god will give you long life, some other god will give you prosperity or a son, to get a son, to have a son born to you, and so on. So this chapter 5 in Karma Yoga, what we were talking about is basically how to remain so steady and to get so much satisfaction from within that basically we don't have any, nothing affects us, nothing about actually happens around us affects us. And in this second section that we are doing, if you jump to text 18, it's a famous verse, Vidya Vinaya Sampatte, that one.
Sorry, this one, right?
Vidya Vinaya Sampanne, yeah. Brahmane Gavihastine.
Vidya Vinay Sampanne Brahmane Gavi Hastine. Okay.
Yeah, Shuni Chaiva, Shvapakecha, Pandita Samadarshana.
Pandita Samadarsh.
Yeah. So meaning that those who are so full of this Vidya Vinaya Sampanne, Vidya, so full of this transcendental knowledge, are so Vinaya. Vinaya usually means soft, but in this situation, it basically means that they see equally. What do they see? Whether it is a Brahmin, whether it is a Gavi or a cow, whether it's a Hastini or an elephant, whether it's a dog, Shuni, Shwan is a dog. Jaiva Shvapakecha Pandita Samadarshana. The person who is truly full of transcendental wisdom sees no difference between all this. You want to read the translation in English?
Yeah. The humble sages, by virtue of true knowledge, see with equal vision a learned and gentle Brahmana, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog eater.
Outcast. Okay, here a dog and a dog eater meaning like an outcast, someone who's not even allowed
It's
in
called
the
as
older
what is it? Chandala.
Chandela. Chandala,
Chandala.
yeah. That is because I think those that burn the dead bodies and they walk through the graveyards to living off whatever they find there. That's actually like considered a dog eater caste, yeah. Though you must know, just on a side note, there is a situation where Vishwamitra Muni eats a dog. Did you know that?
Oh, I didn't know that.
And that is to bring home the principle of, again, there's a specific shloka connected with it, that in apatakale dharma, apatakale meaning in unnatural times, there's an emergency. You have to do things that you would not normally do at all. This is an important and very practical, commonsensical principle in our coming down in our scriptures. So Vishwamitra Muni apparently started doing austerities and started doing dhyana or meditation. Ages passed, yugas passed, eons passed, and he was not aware of anything. When he opened his eyes, it was in one cycle, it was like the tail end of a yuga, and all around him it was just arid and dry with nothing to be seen. And by then, Vishwamitra Muni felt the pangs of hunger. This scrawny dog came in front of him, and he understood that basically this is the Lord's arrangement to satisfy. So, the total detachment, or you can say, without being overcome the revulsion as we would have been, he does something and eats that dog. So, this is called apatakala dharma. The dharma is different in certain emergency situations, you have to adjust. And an example of this is again given when Srila Prabhupada went to Russia. Fascinating those accounts, anecdotes. I think they're even available online. You look at Prabhupada in Russia. The person who went with him is one of his earliest disciples, still alive today, called Shama Sundar, an American. So they were straight away in trouble. You're talking about the 70s in Russia. Rush and long queues in front of places, unhappy looking people, bitterly cold. Shamasundar, they put up Prabhupada and an assistant, a Hindu boy who tagged on at the last minute. And no, sorry, they met this Hindu boy because in Russia, I think in Moscow, because his father was posted there. And they met him at a supermarket, and this boy got so interested, he tagged on. And so he came on to the hotel to serve Srila Prabhupada. And a situation arose where after spending many hours standing in a queue, the Sham Sundar got some milk, some packets of milk. And maybe they'd already taken rice with them and some sugar. There was nothing else, barely any fruit, barely any vegetables. And there was a stove cooking arrangement in Prabhupada's room that they always carried with them in those days. And of course, he had this famous brass 2-tier or 3-tier pressure cooker, like a cooker, not pressure. So they made rice kheer. But the problem was they had made so much rice kheer, they had nothing to store it in. Now Prabhupada used to always use a brass lota, like a pot, for his toilet, to wash himself after his using the toilet. He brought that lota and said, fill it and store it in this and we can eat it. So the disciples were stunned, the two people with him, that someone who is stressing so much cleanliness and hygiene and shuddhi and bath 3 times a day and something that's being used in the toilet, that too to wash your backside, after okay, it's not a plastic mug, and those lotas were maintained very nicely scrubbed, the polished copper or brass, but still to something you're going to eat, because there was nothing else, no vessels are available. For Prabhupada, it was better than asking the hotel for some, maybe God knows that too in Russia, it is pretty stark the way they use non-veg, without going into detail. So I think Prabhupada preferred this. At least it is something that he had been using and maintaining cleanly. And when they asked him that how can you do this, it is shocking, he said, this is apatakala dharma. We can't just waste. With great difficulty we found milk and we had sugar and rice and we made, and this is going to be our meal today and tomorrow. It's so cold, we don't need a fridge, it will stay. But what do we keep it in? I think they couldn't leave it in that main vessel, or because the main vessel needed to be washed and got ready for the next cooking. So he stored it in the lota. So that aspect is also there. And talking about dog and dog eater and everything here in this translation, the humble sages, they don't see any difference. They don't differentiate. And the point is made that the Brahman and the cow are basically in the mode of goodness, presumably. They are sattvic, their lifestyle, and the cow is also considered very much a sattvic animal, because whatever it produces from its body benefits mankind so many ways. Even when it's dead, you take off the skin and use it as leather. Its horns are used, even in some puja situations, they are used. Its dung, its urine is used for medical reasons. It gives milk through which you get ghee and butter and whatnot. What else? I can't think of anything. And it's basically such a gentle, loving creature. And people, I have had students here who tell me that when they grew up, they had cows in the family, and that is such an calming and soothing experience being with cows, that in their worst times today, when they are having difficulties, it's that memory that suits them and keeps them free of stress. So the cow is very much something that is of such great use to others. The cow is in the mode of goodness. Brahmana is presumably in the mode of goodness if he is a true Brahmana, or person, man or woman of Brahmanical mentality, because he's again doing so much good. He can tell truth from falsehood. He can discriminate what is right and wrong and advise others and show people the path. And he should remain detached always and live on whatever the Lord offers and not get paid for his services, live off donations and contributions. So that's the mode of goodness. Now, an elephant is supposed to be in the mode of passion. Why exactly I can't explain, but I think it's just that its huge weight and it makes it the potential for destruction is there. The weight, if it attacks, you're finished. It steps or something, it squashes it. Elephant is also considered, elephants remember, have sharp memory, considered most intelligent animal. That's there. And a dog eater, of course, is meant to be in tamogun or tamas. But the sage that is full of um, wisdom doesn't see any difference between them, because he sees it inside each one of them. Basically, the Paramatma is present, guiding them in the body that they have acquired or earned by their previous actions. So this is a very high level. And in fact, when we were growing up, and when the government is constantly telling you about secular and all religions should be treated equally, they can't tell us why. Give us an explanation like this. Because otherwise, there are cultural and differences in practices between Hindus and Christians and Parsis and Muslims and Sindhis and so on. So how can everything just be one, except in a very superficial way? Straight away, you get into dietary differences, different festivals, different mentality.
That's
Uh,
that's the belief in, like, if you take Advaita Vedanta, it's the belief that they will say that, I mean, there's this famous phrase, like, Aham Brahmasmi,
yeah,
like,
Aham Brahmasmi. Yeah,
I am Brahman, or like Tattvamasi, uh, that
you
thou
are the,
art,
yeah.
and that belief that, like, everything, I mean, that concept is very difficult to kind of, I mean, it's understandable, but it's like you said, it kind of, it's not, it's kind of not getting one,
Practically,
practically it's very
I,
difficult to, like, apply it,
yeah,
because
sure.
the ideas are, like, I mean, I was listening to a conversation actually recently with somebody who was an Advaita Vedantist, and so
Yeah.
somebody was asking him this question, like, uh this idea of, like, then how can, like, in people, um like, it seems very empty. There's an emptiness in that, in the
Uh,
idea. There's an emptiness which, and so that person, I mean, he gave some kind of explanation where he said that, it's a given fact that we live our lives in a dualistic perspective, but the
mhm.
higher perspective is the non-dualistic perspective, and that's understandable. But also there's this emptiness that's there, which is very, which nobody can explain what this emptiness is. It's like,
Uh-huh.
and in the path of bhakti, at least, like, when people are giving their complete devotion to Krishna, and they're
Yeah.
giving their loving service to him, and trying to please him, and they're saying, like, I'm the servant of
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
devotee's servant. Basically, they're saying that, I'm in that state. uh, it's kind of a little bit arrogant in that sense to be like, all is one, and or at least, like, presume that, like, you and God are the same in one sense, when there is a clear, there are energies that are obviously much greater than yours, which you
Right.
can't comprehend even if you don't believe in the idea of God also. There are
Mm.
energies that, let's say, like you can't even you can't explain, like how does the sun give its sunlight. This is the most simplest
Right.
of things. You can say,
Mm.
like in scientific ways, you can explain and say that, okay, the sun gives sunlight through this process, but why
Mm.
does it give it? Like, and where does it get this power from to become the sun in the first place? How does this happen in the first place? Like, the most simplest of things are, like, where does who gives the power for it to rain every day, like
Right.
this kind of water to come down and stuff like that and all that. Like, if you think that you and the rain are one and the same, it's very difficult to then to live your life, because you will always be thinking that you are in control of every situation, and when something does get out of your control, you will feel irritated with yourself for not being in charge of that situation, when you can very easily just detach yourself from that idea and say that I am, like, these things that are happening are separate from me, and there is a entity, there's a being that's in charge of the whole of the whole process, and that being
Right.
is responsible for everything to happen. So I see
Mm.
that. So I mean, you one can easily find like loopholes in that argument, and say, there are these things also, there's that, and there's this, and there's this. But yeah, people find like ways to like kind of say, this is that. There's an emptiness that's there in that, which I feel like
Right. Right.
void that's there in that.
And what you're talking about arrogance is true because it's confused thinking. How can we deny that uh, we may, however elevated we may become, our powers and our ability to control things is so limited. We can't stop anything. We can't make the sun come back a second time after it, the sun has set. We can't even stop a nail from growing. However elevated you may be, even if you're a yogi, the nail keeps growing. Damn nuisance, you have to cut it or it gets in the way. So it is. This is mithya. This is complete maya. This idea that aham brahmasmi or tat tvam asat. You are that. Yeah, we are one with the Lord in quality because He is also spiritual and we are spiritual. But the quantity of the power and the quantity and the size, not just in terms of the atma, there's a huge difference of the potency. It's huge difference, and it's uh, untrue to say,
And
I am that, you are this, or
mm,
I can, I am Brahmasmi. It is
that's why
actually kind
that in that belief, like, it's so the path is so difficult to cross,
of,
because there is like a um, you have to be on such a high level to like get rid of everything. You have to put aside all your material desires. But the I would say the thing is that it's like, in the end, ultimately, like, what you're seeking is liberation in the end, which is again a
right.
kind of a desire that you're seeking. So
It is a desire.
how do you get past that idea then? Like, in the sense that, like, if your desire is to get rid of all desires, that itself is a desire in the end of the day. And
Yeah.
so why not just accept that, you desire something that is higher than yourself, and you want to strive for it
Yeah.
and achieve it,
And engage in
rather
service. Relate
engage
through
in
service
service.
rather than
Yeah.
try to become that. Mm.
Yeah, I had listened to one person who was speaking about this. It was an Advaita Vedanta. He's saying that somebody was asking him, so what about love? Like, don't you love other people in this
Uh-huh.
sense? So he's like, yeah, if you're on this path, then naturally you will have love for. I was like, that's not a
Others.
given. That's not a given. This thing. If you say that you're on the path of, like, if you believe that everything is one and the same, you're more likely going to think that even the idea of love itself is just one and the same, and even the
Mm.
idea of, like, devotion and service and all these things are one and the same, and you will not even like to meet somebody else, because that this is the ideal person on the path. You will not like to meet somebody else because uh, you know what is the point, like, why to engage yourself in material situations, material surroundings,
Interaction.
and
Interaction.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah, when you're one and the same of everything else. So I found that, so like I found that thing also, because it's kind of an accept, like, people, at least on like, at least who are on the path of like devotion, at least there's a level of acceptance that, look, we are not all the same, like, in the sense there are differences that exist,
Yeah.
and there are people with varying levels of degrees of competence and incompetence, and love and not love and all that stuff, even in the path of, let's say, devotion in one sense. And they are
Right.
not, what do you say, and they're, a lot of them would freely admit, even in the stories that you read also, there are all the stories of different acharyas or people who are going through different obstacles and all that. Like, let's take Dhruva as an example of this. When he was pointed out by Swayambhu Manu, like, that he was going too far in killing the yakshas and all that stuff, he
Yeah.
admitted that he was making a mistake at that time, and that
Uh-huh.
he, there was no arrogance, and there was no, like, okay, I'm, there was no thinking like that in that way. So he accepted and he moved on for his life. So I think,
Mhm.
there are so many examples of people like that in this also, but they're willing to admit that, where they made themselves wrong, which is all that you're asking for. You're not asking for anything else. You're not
Mhm.
asking people to believe in an idea that makes them feel like, they're, that all their problems are non-existent, like even the problem itself is like just an illusion. It's like, no, like everybody has problems, everybody has to go through stuff. So that's what my I was listening to this talk, and I was just thinking about it, like, I don't
Yeah,
completely
yeah.
believe in that.
I understand. I think for the Advaitins, when they say Jagan Mithya, the world is unreal, that's not true, because the world is real, but it is temporary. And what you're going on talking about, a kind of emptiness, I think you mean a lack of variegatedness. They're not putting anything else there. They're denying everything, but then you have to put some Supreme Lord there to rechannel all your emotions and your aspirations. So that way, the path of bhakti is a lot more practical. It doesn't say that, it doesn't deny the existence of all these problems. Like you said, different emotions, different levels of competence. It just says try and aspire and improve to come to higher levels by dovetailing your normal abilities in the service of the Lord. This way, it gets purified. Your consciousness and your desires get purified. It's far more practical approach, because you cannot just deny the existence of senses. You can suppress them, but you can't deny it, because suppressing is different and denying is different. And in fact, somewhere later in the Bhagavad Gita, you will come across the example given is that of the tortoise or the turtle. How a really wise man learns to put out his senses when required to do things,
And
and
put
then
it back.
withdraw the senses and put it back. It's a remarkable quality that the tortoise has. That if the senses are always around, it is the natural impulse of the senses to basically go running towards sense objects. It's natural. Eyes want to see something beautiful, tongue wants to taste something, and then we get kind of do things that we don't. Simple level. I now don't look at the cheese rack when I go shopping in spring, my weekly shopping. I love cheese, but it just doesn't agree with me. My stomach can't digest, in the sense I overeat and it causes acidity. So I simply don't look at those cheeses. And nowadays they have a lot of cheese options, Kodai Farm and some other, so many. In the past, it was only Amul cheese. Amul cheese I can handle.
Hmm.
But so it is a natural impulse. The tongue is active, the brain has memory stored. It reminds you that cheese you have not tried, this other one you have not tried. Invariably, I give it away or throw it away. So
Hmm.
the natural impulse of the senses is to rush towards something that will give it satisfaction. These are the objects, the sense objects. How can you just deny it and say this is illusion? It is really completely, it's complete illusion. So I agree with you that you can poke a lot of holes in what this Advaitin mentality, the Advaita Vedantins are saying, because their philosophy is monotheism. Everything becomes one, mono. But the Vaishnava path is straight away one, and Madhvacharya is, and Ramanujacharya is about duality or dualism. There are always two. That is a Lord and there is a Jiva. There is always interaction. The interaction gives us a chance to use our senses and bring out our feelings and emotions, and then from there take it forward, to elevate and to come to higher levels of consciousness. It's far more practical and real, the bhakti path. And the way in the purports, Prabhupada makes it even more practical, because he knows you can't aim for something impossible and then leave people utterly frustrated because they can't get there. Here in this the section that we're reading about this, the those who don't make a distinction between these five different categories of living entities, some in Sattva-guna, some lower level, Rajo and even Tamas, because they see they're so single-minded. They've reached a level where they're so single-minded that they basically see only the existence of the super soul or the Brahmana, the Paramatma, sorry, inside each of these. So that's a high level, and I am saying that that is our real answer to secularism. Because when we were growing up in school, this whole Nehruvian idea is basic. It is not Hindutva that is the answer to secularism. It is not Hindutva at all. Hindutva is again completely, however genuine their grievances may be with the Nehruvian way of thinking and explaining the world to its followers. The Hindutva just brings a very narrow bodily designation based conception. We are Hindus, we are greater, only Hindus, beat and harass the Muslims and drive them out somehow. This is an extremely material level of consciousness.
There's also like a there's also like a level of insecurity that's there also in that belief.
And obviously, but what is happening is that with the Hindutva forces, they are for once maybe taking charge of temples and allowing people to talk openly about their religiosity and spirituality. Suddenly, they are very popular. But they are offering what they are offering as a replacement for secularism, or you can call it the pseudo secularism that followed the post Nehruvian period in India. This is not the real answer. The real answer is a verse like this: that how are we all the same? That is, that we should not distinguish or discriminate between Muslims and Christians, and which is what the Nehruvian ideal is. Yeah, fine, but why and how? Because basically, all of us, the external body has an identity, and we have different cultural practices. We are raised differently. We are taught to believe in a different type of God. Those things are real. But at another level, that is basically that finally, when the body burns, what are we individually? Basically, there is a jiva even inside them. So this verse, the Samadarshana, Pandita Samadarshana verse, chapter 5, verse, this particular verse 18 is the answer to pseudo-secularism. It is not Hindutva at all that is the answer. Hindutva is only going to destroy and create division and create more suspicion, and like you said, is coming from insecurity. There is a certain amount of risk, because I think for practical purposes also, ISKCON is dealing a lot with the Hindutva forces. I don't know why. I mean, I think there are practical reasons. A lot of foreigners want to escape, foreign ISKCON devotees want to escape harassment in hostile countries. They live in China, Russia. What do they need? They need a visa. Where to live in India, whether Mayapur or Vrindavan or Delhi or wherever. Who is going to give the visa? The government. Who is the government today? The Hindutva government. So ISKCON is forced in certain situations to be very nice and to bend over backwards and to cultivate, because there is a huge benefit. Some 5,000 people suddenly are able to continue to live on the Dham because visa, what is the visa? I think permanent visa or 10 years, 15 years has been sanctioned. So they not only live in more peacefully, but they actually practice and contribute to the temples and contribute to the Mayapur service situation. So these things are there, but at the individual, these pressures or compulsions are there, I understand fully. But at an individual level, I think it's very important for devotees to tell the difference. Where does ISKCON stand and where does the Hindutva understanding stand? There is black and white difference, really black and white difference. So
ISKCON I feel like is more like it dwells, like it is religious in one sense, but then also like it dwells, its emphasis is more on the spiritual, which is spiritual. Like it's yeah.
Sure, and we shouldn't lose it. ISKCON shouldn't be losing it. That's what I meant. This is something very great. Most other so-called spiritual organizations can't even tell the difference between matter and spirit. I don't want to name them. You go a little into the philosophy and practice and what they are telling their people, followers, you can tell they don't even understand the difference between what is matter and what is spirit. You know, matter is temporary and spirit is eternal, and etc. So the spirituality and spiritual understanding of things is something very valuable ISKCON is bringing to the world situation. And we shouldn't lose it in the present confused times that we're living in. Things are going to go more and more in that Hindutva direction. It's obvious. It's like, it's the juggernaut has started rolling and nothing is going to stop it. They will give you 100 different explanations why this particular policies now they're bringing out are long overdue. Okay, there is some truth in what they're talking about Islamic terrorism, that it is really getting out of hand. But it might be also that the more the Hindutva forces get control, the more extreme Islamic retaliation is going to
like both are,
I don't
both
know.
is bad, like both is bad, like in the sense like you can't, like in one sense we can't say that that it's completely unjustified, because there are attacks on from the other side
I
also, that was there.
absolutely
And
I agree.
also thing is like, and nobody is like, no, it is in India, there is a belief that if you talk about that, then you are like against, you are an anti, like if you talk about, let's say, a Muslim attack, for example, then you
Yeah,
are, anti-Muslim, or you are like, you don't support their cause, and you're, you're not standing up for them, and things like
agree.
that. So if you say something that is, anti, like let's say Hindu, then you'll get people, especially on the left of the Hindu society,
I
they will
understand.
praise you and they will say nice things about you. The
I
same
agree.
society will say, don't talk about this violence that is done by the other community also for this. So that sort of duality that exists.
Absolutely.
That's why duality is important. why get,
I
why
agree.
get non-duality? It's like,
Yeah,
if you get into
the
that, you'll get into more issues.
yeah, I agree. The hypocrisy is very much there. The so-called intellectual, the left-leaning intellectuals of India, foreign
Yeah.
educated, I agree that they can never see the other side. I agree fully that there's a lot of hate campaign even on the Muslim side that is going on and turning people against. So, but I don't think this is the answer, because the
Hmm.
answer is more like what's given in this verse. Now, in
Yeah.
this section, in this chapter 5, in this section, another thing that is really stressed, so it comes up only later, is this kama krodha, that is both lust and anger, how one has to get past it in order to actually get anywhere in spiritual life. This that kama krodha vimukta. I'll just find the verse for you. It is beyond verse 18.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it actually comes up only in verse 26, but there's a reference
Oh,
to it in verse 22 also.
okay.
Okay. If
This
we will
one.
look at we will look at verse 26 first and then jump back to 22. I'll tell you why. Now, verse 26 is important because here, yeah, you can read the translation.
So it's those who are free from anger and all material desires, who are self-realized, self-disciplined, and constantly endeavoring for perfection, are assured of liberation in the supreme in the very near future.
Okay.
So,
Here, yeah, it's not material desire here means lust. So it's not just enough to get past lust. Apparently, krodha is considered the younger brother of lust. Anger is considered the younger brother of lust. Now, and the example is given of Vishwamitra Muni, who finally, after initial struggles, overcame one, but then fell into the pitfall of anger, which is that apparently when Vishwamitra Muni was doing his tapas and meditation, Menaka, this celestial damsel Apsara Menaka, came his way with the deliberate intention of breaking his tapasya or testing him, and made herself very attractive and seduced him. And they basically lived happily for a while or whatever till he realizes it's for a long time in celestial years, in time frames. Then Vishwamitra Muni decides to start all over again and be able to overcome lust. So what happens is he then again does years and years of extreme austerity and tapasya and renunciation, and he's kind of got past lust. So then comes Ramba, Ramba Tilotama. This Ramba was another celestial damsel coming with the same intentions as Menaka. But by now, Vishwamitra Muni has got past lust. So when he sees her coming, he knows what her intention is. But what happens is he reacts so furiously that he curses her. And because he has made himself so angry that someone dared to try to obstruct his tapasya. So that anger, then he falls into the pitfall of anger and he loses all the progress he has made spiritually through his meditation. So lust and anger go together. Now both things have to be tackled internally, and the reason is really, and I was listening to a lecture with Chaitanya Charan where he explains that lust we may have got over, But let us assume that someone who's been practicing, who's many years elderly, is got past lust. But if he or she is still prone to anger, what it really means is that the desires have been removed from one material realm and been redirected to another material realm. They have not really been redirected to the spiritual law. That is what it indicates if somebody is given to frequent outburst of anger. I found this very helpful, very useful, because that the two are to be treated together, and how anger is a sign that that particular person internally has redirected his consciousness to just another some other material realm. They have not really redirected it back to the Lord. So we are being warned here in 26 that you have to get past all this, and only then. And the way to get past this is not just to be like the tortoise that withdraws its senses, but to also constantly purify the mind and consciousness and see everything as a part of the Lord's plan, so that even if something goes completely against us, not in our favor, after an initial outburst, we calm down and try to see this as a Lord's plan. Now, if you jump back to verse 22, this is 26, but if you go back to verse 22, yeah, just go back to verse 22.
This one, right? So an
Yeah.
intelligent person does not take part in the sources of misery, which are due to contact with the material senses. O son of Kunti, such pleasures have a beginning and an end, and so the wise man does not delight in them.
Hmm. So, because and if you look at the verse just before it, it is like verse 22 is a continuation of verse 21. Such a
Okay,
liberated.
I think it will start with maybe 20 because I think in is
Ah,
describing something.
that's right.
So so it's like a person who neither rejoices upon achieving something pleasant nor laments upon obtaining something unpleasant, who is self-intelligent, who is unbewildered, and who knows the signs of God, is already situated in transcendence. Transcendence. Such a
That
liberated person is not attracted to material sense pleasure, but is always in trance, enjoying the pleasure within. In this way, the self-realized person enjoys unlimited happiness, for he concentrates on the supreme. An
okay.
intelligent
So
person does not. Yeah. Well,
yeah, basically it means that person is getting all his happiness and satisfaction from within.
hmm.
Okay, he's not looking for external stimuli, and that's how. Because external stimuli, this is a warning given in verse 22. An intelligent person does not take part in the source of misery, which comes due to contact with the material senses. In other words, that external stimuli to give us happiness, why it's not a reliable option, and how an intelligent person doesn't go in that direction, doesn't go there, is because he knows they are temporary. He does not take part. Why is it a source of misery? Because it's temporary. It gives happiness for a while and then dies out. So, to what extent people who are deluded can go? I was reading a book by, I don't know if it is Kenneth Anderson or one of these wildlife writers years ago. I think I still have it. One of these, not Jim Corbett, in South India, somebody who was, yeah, maybe Kenneth Anderson, because he used to live in some part of earlier Bangalore, and I think his son or somebody is still alive now. But what they say is monkeys. Uh, there is a particular tiny monkey who is hunted down or blinded. Hunters come and dig out the eyes. The horrible, a really horrible story. The eyes are then of little tiny monkeys. The eyes are then in some form dried and powdered and consumed to increase an aging man's virility or his ability to perform sexually. So, to what horrible extents people can go to satisfy lust? It's just a kind of very dramatic and vivid answer. What horrible! Some poor creature, kill the creature, at least is better. They are left blinded because this is the purpose, this is the business of the market. It is.
This is
There are these.
there's a actually sorry to interrupt. Actually, there's a story. I don't
Yeah,
know which one it is. Like, about this king that's he asks his son, no, like, can you
Yayati.
exchange your youth?
Yeah, Yayati. Are you talking about Yayati?
That's King Yayati
And
only.
yeah, I think, yeah, go on. Yeah, because he
But
wants to enjoy three
yeah, he
sons.
wants to, yeah, he wants to enjoy like lust basically. So he asks his son to like, you exchange your youth for my old age, and his
Uh-huh.
son accepts, and then he basically like he enjoys his, now he's become young, and he's able to like, I mean, he has this relationship with, I don't know, with some celestial goddess or something like that. He has it.
Right, right, yeah.
Yeah. So then after that, so he enjoys it for like some long time. Then he gets to a point where he realizes that all this is meaningless, and it's just he needs to
Correct.
transcend that state now. Yeah.
Yeah.
So but you
But
were making the point. Yeah.
yeah, I was making the point that not all these people who are chasing lust are so enlightened as this king, and so the amount of terrible karmic things they do, and karmic reactions they are going to get just to satisfy lust. So why is this person, this aging man? Why is there a market for these aging people? Because that source of enjoyment that you can get through coming in contact with the material senses, it is temporary. How is it temporary? Because this wretched man's body is aging. It can't give the happiness it could give earlier. So he's trying all this kind of artificial inputs. So therefore, it says an intelligent person doesn't get into that at all. Instead, he avoids being a slave to lust and then anger, which goes hand in hand with it. And instead, he looks within himself to find the satisfaction. So there's a strong warning about lust and anger all the time. And there are great, great stories. There is the story of how Brahma got attracted and went after his
uh,
own daughter. You know that?
yeah, yeah,
And,
yeah,
and Surya Bhagavan or somebody laughed seeing this spectacle. But these things are there also as a warning to us to always
there was
basically
this
to be.
great, there was also
Yeah.
another story where this is a great sage, like I don't know his name, but he's meditating underwater, and then in that he sees two fishes
Shaubhara
mating.
Muni. Shaubhara
Shagara.
Muni.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So he sees that, and he's like, he's trying to get rid of lust actually. So
But
he's
just
trying to,
open chance.
but when he opens
Mm.
his eyes, and that itself is enough for him to like just
Forget all
he
his
gets,
vows and his.
yeah.
Mm.
And so he gets out, and then the thing is like, I think he goes to the king, the nearby king, and then he asks the king, I give me any daughter that you can like
Marry
marry and all stuff.
and
So the
produce
king
his
obviously,
daughter.
yeah, the king looked at him and said that he looked at him and said, okay, this person not dressed properly, he's like, who will accept him, and this that. And so then he said, so basically he said, okay, he thought of a clever way. He's like, I'll get all the daughters. He has some 50 daughters or something. So I'll get all of them, and yeah, I'll get all of them, and I'll get all of them, and if they choose you, then you get married. So
Right.
then he's like, none of them choose him. So then he
Uh-huh.
gets, so he's like, okay, they're all are choosing me because I'm not looking good. I'm not this. So he does like, he's a sage, so he does something and he becomes good looking and all that. And so he
Yeah.
comes back, and then now all the girls want to get like, they want they want to marry him. So they all get married to him, but then he's already in a elevated state. I don't know whether he engages in
Produces
that.
love. He
Huh?
produces love children. As far
Yeah,
as I know,
he
some
produced a lot of
thousand.
children. Some lot of children. So he does all
Right.
these things, and then in the end, I think he gets past it. I think he gets past that. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
not all of us can like get married to
Correct.
50 women at one time, and then they get like
So these,
like,
yeah, so these examples are given to help us on the track. Of course,
yeah.
the Shaubhara Muni went through it for his purification, Vishwamitra Muni for his purification. But those examples are there so that we can learn and fix our mind more on the Supreme Lord or something to it. Recently, just someone I was talking to, someone from ISKCON, she made a kind of very practical but very, very totally true statement. I think her sister was complaining about some lack of adjustment in that sister's marriage, and then the sister's son has got married, and they are having some lack of adjustment. So this lady was telling me the advice that she gave that whole complaining group, that everybody in the material world is living in some adjustment situation. In her kind of slightly faulty English, she said, എല്ലാവരുടെയും situation ഒരു adjustment ആണ്. Because material world is like that. Nobody is really fully happy with what they have. You learn to tolerate a parent tolerates children, or an office or a boss, or your looks, you're not happy, you would have preferred a thinner face or a fatter face, or a different body, or a different type of ability. Nobody is happy because the material world is a place, the only way to live is by adjusting. And she was saying that once we understand this, life becomes a little better. But this is all that's on offer, these adjustments. So, and in the process of adjusting, we can avoid falling victim to anger and frustration and disappointment and striving more and more to find happiness through new sources. And here in these verses, that this chapter that's going to end soon, that is, if you jump to verse 29, which is the final verse in chapter 5, this is another famous verse. Oktaram Yajna Tapasam Sarva Loka Maheshwaram. This one.
It says, person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the supreme lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all the living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material miseries.
Yeah, basically meaning that there is no other way out but to finally put more and more and more increasing quantities of trust and to take full shelter of the Supreme Lord and to understand he is our real beneficiary. He is like our friend. He is the one, he is actually Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. Demigods we may go to and offer yagyas to get different, because they are departmental heads, that's their role. We may go to demigods and pray to them to get us different rewards that we want to make our life more successful in this material world. We should know that he is also Sarvaloka Maheshwaram in the sense, Yajna Tapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. He is really the Lord even of the demigods and of all the planets. In fact, if you see, even if you are doing a Ganapati Yagya or a Devi Puja, they will put Vishnu there in the center in a particular pot. They will mark it with the swastik, and it may be in the form of a coconut kept there with auspicious leaves around the coconut, but that is the Vishnu Sankalpa. And unless Vishnu is present, Vishnu is asked to come and sit there, and the yagya that is being done is basically seen as, the flames are seen as the mouth of Vishnu, the tongue, like that. And the sankalpa in abstract way, that whatever you pour into it satisfies the open mouth. Whether you're throwing bananas into the fire, as happens in the Diksha ceremony, or you're pouring ghee into it, or flowers into it, etc. So the Lord, the Supreme Lord, is always present even when we are having dealings with the demigods. And we should understand Suhridam Sarvabhutanam. He is the true Suhrit or friend of all living entities. Jnatva Mam Shantim Richati. Jnatva Mam, one who understands this, understands properly and then is peaceful. Because there's nothing really to aspire for. Because even if unjust things have happened to us, on a material platform, there is really no justice. And I tell the story of, I don't know, I might have told you, narrated this earlier, so I'm just going to kind of fast forward and shorten it. When I went abroad on a scholarship, this was in 1987, the very next year, there was a Rhodes Scholar, these scholarships, she was like an all-rounder. She was a doctor from Mumbai, her name was Mridula Shastri. She had a brother, but she made it. And she had grand plans to do community medicine in the 80s. This was something very great. And she had come to the UK to train. And she was also like a champion swimmer. She was a horse rider. She'd represented India in equestrian sports, some unusual middle-class family background. But they gave her all the facilities because she was so talented. She came. She spent a few months there because the term starts there in about September. Come December, for the Christmas break, she was to go and visit her brother and presumably also her boyfriend or fiance or whatever in America. So she took this Pan Am flight, which was bombed. A bomb went off, everybody perished. This was the Lockerbie disaster. The whole plane split up and fell somewhere in a part of Scotland called Lockerbie. So people in that small village called Lockerbie got the fright of their life in the evening. They looked up and saw flaming parts of a fire and then all the other mess, the bodies and so on, dropping on them. I remember very clearly, we were all called to give support when her parents were flown in to identify the body. There was no body. There was just a hand with a bangle which the mother recognized. But in one stroke, that was the end of all their dreams and all the hard work that they had put into this girl. It was the end of everything. They have a surviving son. I don't know his name. Some very traditional name. This was Mrudula, other one I don't know. Now, so many years later, okay, the people who were basically charged with the murder, I think it was an Iranian or a Lebanese, some two people, one of them they caught and they put him in prison. He spent some 30, 35 years in prison, and these families were meeting regularly and they had their own group to keep praying for justice. What justice? Their loved ones are all gone. Finally, the American court, I think, decided, I don't know, for some political diplomatic reasons, that the man, having spent 30, 35 years, was suffering from cancer and likely to die in a couple of years. So they just let him free to go back to his family. So this came as a huge blow for the, especially and including the parents of Mridula Shastri. So all their wait and the hoping that, before their eyes shut and before they die, some justice for their daughter would be witnessed. So there is really no justice on the material. There is no guaranteed justice on the material platform. Of course, we have the Supreme Court and we have the High Courts, and we should turn to them and take recourse to law where unfair things are done. But separately and privately, don't hope for any solution from there. Whereas instead, if we are having a strong, we have made Krishna our Sukrit and friend and put all our trust, he will intervene and make sure that what is best for us happens. Okay. So we end this chapter on this note, and next week we can meet again and start chapter 6 next Saturday, if that's okay with you. And chapter 6 is also quite fascinating because it's on a different track, the technical process and the kind of powers that a real yogi can develop. That's all really fascinating. We can start applying it and see people who are capable of it. At least like the Laguna Beach guys who were probably demigods in a previous life, you can see people able to do impossible feats now who must have been yogis in a previous life, and they're bringing that siddhi with them.
They said that the story of Vrindavan also, which is interesting, like in the start of that past, the 10th canto, they said that like the people who Krishna grew up with are basically avatars of the demigods. They're like, so there's this thing where the demigods, they know that Krishna is like going to be descending into this earth, and so they approach Brahma and they ask him like, we want to be so Brahma actually organizes this whole thing. He tells them that you are all going to be citizens of Vrindavan. So all the people, like, the people who are the Mother Yashoda, Nanda Maharaj, the other gopis and all of them are actually demigods who've come as avatars and who are living there and all that, basically.
So here is your answer. Here is your answer to your question: why do the demigods not go back to Vaikuntha? And your answer, and I said, because unless they aspire to, and those of them that do aspire get to take part in these leelas. In fact, my understanding is that even with an ordinary jiva, even once, say, he, after many lifetimes of practice, or in a few lifetimes or one lifetime, gets it all right and is fully qualified to go back to Vaikuntha or Krishna Loka, he doesn't go there directly. Do you know why? He goes to something that is called Bhauma Leela. That is, if right now Krishna is doing his Leelas on some planet, in some universe, in some part of the universe, that Jiva takes birth there to get practiced to take his role in the different Leelas and the different services before he actually goes back to Krishna Loka. Okay. So thank you for all your interesting information and input. And
thank you.
Okay, Kannan, all the best with your upcoming interview and so on at 2 o'clock. Okay.
So I'll just stop the recording.